Namaskar and welcome to Sunset Television. I am Vishal Dahiya and you're watching our special show Perspective, where we bring you the holistic viewpoint on all key issues. A 360-degree view with the help of our experts and analysts out here. Today we're going to talk about Pakistan's terror links. In fact, India has once again asked Pakistan to take credible and irreversible steps to end its state-sponsored terrorism and dismantle the terrorist infrastructure in its territories. The permanent mission of India at the United Nations hit out against Pakistan while exercising its right of reply at the 48th session of UNHRC. Last week, India responded to Pakistan Prime Minister's address at the UNGA, saying that Islamabad has an established history of actively supporting terrorists. In a scathing indictment, India called Pakistan an arsonist disguised as a firefighter. According to the latest report of Congressional Research Service, that is CRS, Pakistan is home to at least 12 groups designated as foreign terrorist organizations by the United States of America, and 5 of them are India-focused, like Lashkar-e-Taiba, that is LET, and Jaish-e-Mohammed, JEM. The CRS report also says that Islamabad is yet to take any decisive action against the India and Afghanistan-focused terrorists. In fact, Pakistan is languishing in the grey list of Paris-based Intergovernmental Financial Action Task Force, FATF, due to strategic deficiencies on its part in countering money laundering and terror financing as well. So today we're going to try and analyze all aspects of this issue, try and understand what is actually wrong out there and what needs to be done on the ground by not only Pakistan but by also the international community. And for more on this, we're joined by 3 distinguished experts. Let me first introduce them to you. Beginning with, we have with us Dr. Shriram Chaulia, our foreign affairs expert, is joining us here in the studio. We're also joined by former Ambassador Prabhu Dayal. He's been in Pakistan, he's served there, and we also have Retired Major General Dhruv C. Katoch, Director of India Foundation. Welcome, all of you gentlemen. Let me begin with you, Ambassador Dayal, since you've been there and you've seen it firsthand. You've have a clear understanding of how Pakistanis operate, specifically when we're talking about state-sponsored terrorism. Not a surprise the way things are going on, but time and again, India has put forth its concerns, and so has several in the international community. Nothing seems to be changing on their part.
Well, Vishal, thank you. I have indeed served in Pakistan, and I have seen its policy evolve slowly, wherein it has used terrorism as its instrument of state policy. This has been amply rebutted by India on a number of occasions. Recently, the Indian First Secretary at the United Nations, in her rebuttal to the speech of the Pakistan Prime Minister, pointed out very clearly that Pakistan has an established history and policy of harboring, aiding, and actively supporting terrorists. She also pointed out that Pakistan holds the ignoble record of hosting the largest number of terrorists proscribed by the UN Security Council. And she reminded, of course, that Osama bin Laden had got shelter in Pakistan.
Indeed.
So the fact remains that Pakistan has finally developed in a manner, slowly but steadily, its policy of using terrorism against whatever interest it wants to. First of all, it was devised as an instrument of policy against India. You know, Zia-ul Haq realized after the 1971 war that Pakistan could not face India in a head-on war.
Okay.
So he developed this art of waging proxy war, a covert war, by using terrorist organizations. They were funded, they were trained and armed by Pakistan and infiltrated into India. This has happened all across the years. It has happened also not only against India, but also against Pakistan, against Afghanistan.
Okay.
So there are various ways in which Pakistan has been evolving its terrorism-related policies. It has been put on the FATF watch list, which is called the grey list. It has been struggling to come out from there. but the FATF has refused to do so because, in very clear words, the FATF has said that Pakistan has not taken action against UN designated terrorists, who include people like Hafiz Saeed and so many others, Masood Azhar.
Indeed.
So the fact of the matter is that Pakistan's activities are not hidden from anybody. Its links with terrorism are not hidden from anybody. But the problem is that till now, Pakistan has been getting away, and the time has come for the global community to act decisively and sanction Pakistan.
Okay. We'll come to that part as well, Ambassador Dayal, as to what exactly the international community should be doing. But let me first bring in, General Katoch here as well. General Katoch, as Ambassador Dayal was pointing out, it clearly looks like, and it has been very evident that use of terrorism has now become a sort of a part of state policy for Pakistan. And, the way things are moving around, how do you see Pakistan responding to the criticism which has been coming in not only from India, but from several other nations as well?
Thank you, Vishal. You see, I think Pakistan is now getting increasingly placed in a very tight corner. It has actually earlier managed to evade all the tight corners which it came through, primarily because of the war which was being waged in Afghanistan and the American presence there. The Americans required Pakistan as a base for their logistic support. So Pakistan kept getting away, but now that the Americans are out, I think the scenario is going to change dramatically. One, for the last 3 years, Pakistan's effort at destabilizing India and at creating violence in Jammu and Kashmir has been substantially reduced, primarily because of the revocation of the provisions of Article 370 on the 5th of August 2019. Number two, the very firm action being taken by the Indian Army and the BSF on the line of control, and the proactive operations being carried out inside Jammu Kashmir, especially with the help of the civil population. So all these factors have now converged to have made it extremely difficult for Pakistan to carry out such activities. Even recently, we have seen an encounter which took place along the line of control, where all of them, 2 people, one was killed, one was arrested, and the rest ran back. So Pakistan is having problems. But more importantly, Vishal, I think what is going to happen now is what is going to happen internally within Pakistan. Whenever you create problems of terrorism for others and use it as an instrument of state policy, those very instruments come back to bite you. Now, they will face serious problems from the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, which is, again, an ideologically based terrorist groups. And they are aligned to the Afghan Taliban. They want to convert Pakistan into a Sharia-compliant state on the lines of Afghanistan. They have problems in Balochistan, they have problems in Sindh, they have problems in Gilgit-Baltistan. Within Pakistan, we have sectarian organizations like the Sipahi-e-Saiba, which are fighting against the Shias. So we are finding, as far as Pakistan is concerned, there is a host of problems which they will be facing, which they are already facing, and they are going to get compounded in the near future, which will lead them to implode, especially because they are on a tottering economy. So all these factors combined together does not spell good news for Pakistan.
Let me bring in Dr. Shriram Cholia here as well. Dr. Cholia, from your point of view, if we have to understand clearly, and if we have to, look at the overall holistic picture here, it becomes pretty much clear that Pakistan's acts are now coming to light, obviously, to the international community. India has been pointing it out time and again to both Pakistan and the world community as well. But as General Katoch was also pointing out, looks like time is running out for this nation.
Yeah, a lot of constituencies have woken up, Vishal, especially since the fall of Kabul to Taliban. I mean, even those who used to view this region as if there is some kind of a territorial dispute between Pakistan and India, or some kind of a shadow boxing for influence between Pakistan and India. Now they are seeing it as primarily the problem is of terrorism, which has always been our point of view for a long time. this is not about dispute. It's actually the problem of the nature of the state itself.
It's a well-established fact that they've been using terrorism.
Exactly. So I think even Republican senators and representatives in the U.S. Congress are now moving for more and more inquiries and to review. The U.S. government is reviewing its entire Pakistan policy. They're under tremendous pressure to explain as to how is it that 20 years the U.S. said that Pakistan was a so-called major non-NATO ally. Only 17 countries in the world have this status of MNNA. And Pakistan is one of them. If you look at the list of the others, they are all much more decent states that have actually supported U.S. national interests. But this one played the double game and actually quotes to have defeated the U.S. now, claims to have defeated the U.S. through Taliban. So I think there is a realization that this state has really been given too much long rope and that it misused it, and that in the name of, they claim that they had their own war on terror, and we have been calling out that yes, Pakistani people have suffered. Yes, they are saying more than 80,000 or even 1 lakh casualties they have had in their own war on terror inside Pakistani territory. Yes, it is true, but that doesn't mean that the state and the elements of the state were not behind it. The state actually destabilizes its own country. It's that kind of situation, right? So the people of Pakistan, the civil society, even liberal and moderate elements who often are suppressed, do know the fact that it is the so-called establishment, as they call it, which has a hand behind most of these, terrible, nefarious activities in the region. So both the international community, as well as, I would think, people inside Pakistan who know the atrocities and the violence and the horrific acts that happened during the last round of the Tehreek-e-Taliban and the state insurgency, all of them realizes that it's going to come back to haunt them, as General Katoch is saying, and they ought to actually stop them from playing with fire again, because they have done it once. They have burnt their own fingers and have also spread so much violence and mayhem in the region. It's our collective duty, including for Pakistani people, not to allow the establishment to do this one more time.
And this dual approach can't work anymore, that, you use terrorism as a tool of state policy, and then at the international forum, you play victim. That is something which has been called out by India time and again. Mr. Dayal, looking at one related aspect here, and a very important one, when we're talking about the use of terror. In fact, the Congressional Research Committee report also mentions that, and something which is now in public domain and is pretty much known to everyone in the Indian subcontinent, is the way Pakistan has been involved in Afghanistan, and with now Taliban at the helm of affairs in Afghanistan, things is going to become a little more complicated out there, and obviously they will end up, burning themselves this time around, as General Katoch was pointing out.
Well, the Congressional Committee report to which you referred speaks of 5 different kinds of terrorists who are harbored by Pakistan or who have their bases in Pakistan. One, of course, which is very important from the US point of view, are the global sort of terrorists. That is to say, terrorist organizations who have a global outreach. Al-Qaeda, the Islamic State of Khorasan province, and of course, the Islamic State per se. Then there are terrorist organizations which have been acting against Afghanistan. The Haqqani network and the Taliban are most prominent among these. So these organizations occupy the pride of place in the US Congressional report. But it goes on to name the various organizations which are designed specifically to target India. And these include the Lashkar-e-Taiba, the Jaish-e-Mohammed, the Harkat-e-Shahid Islam, the Harkat-e-Mujahideen, and of course the Hizbul Mujahideen. These are all organizations which have been nurtured by Pakistan's ISI, funded, trained, armed, to be used against India.
Indeed.
Of course, as the report goes on to say, there are also those terrorist organizations which have begun to target Pakistan itself, and foremost amongst these is Tehreek-e-Taliban, Pakistan. And as the general said, the chickens are coming home to roost, because these organizations were going to bite Pakistan, and everybody had been telling Pakistan that. But Pakistan did not pay heed to this warning, and surely that is what is now beginning to happen more and more pronouncedly.
Okay, okay. Jalkanoch, in your first response, you refer to these key points. But when we're looking at Afghan theater here and the way things are moving about in that country, as Ambassador Dayal is pointing out, once again, this becomes much more clear, and it should become more clear to the international community as well, that this, this sort of facade which has been created by Pakistan playing victim when it comes to the issue of terror needs to be called out immediately. Strong actions need to be taken immediately at the international forum.
Absolutely right. You see, for a very long time, in fact, for the last 20 years, when the Americans were involved in Vietnam, they pampered Pakistan. In a sense, it was like putting the cat in charge of the milk. So obviously they didn't win, but now we are increasingly finding voices in the United States which are stating that we fought the wrong enemy. We should have actually fought Pakistan. Now, I didn't hear these voices earlier, but these voices are coming in now, especially after the debacle which the Americans received in the withdrawal, which took place by the end of August. Now, when I am looking per se at Afghanistan and the way the situation is developing there, I think all the surrounding countries are going to be very adversely impacted, starting from the Central Asian Republic, which are to the north, Iran to the west, and both Pakistan and China, which are the other two bordering countries.
Okay.
Because when you look at it over a period of time, the implosion which is taking place within Afghanistan without any security being provided by anybody. Now, earlier, the Americans were actually paying for the security. They are out. Who is going to foot that bill? That money is not there. China is not going to pay. Pakistan is bankrupt. And I don't see anybody else coming in. So the situation in Afghanistan is going to go from bad to worse. I'm afraid the people will suffer, but the impact is going to be on the surrounding countries. So Pakistan is going to face a very serious brunt of the blowback from Afghanistan itself. It has already started in the form of a flood of refugees coming in. But along with the refugees, you will also start finding terrorist and drug groups coming in,
Indeed.
which is going to make the security situation extremely fragile for Pakistan. And because they are the perpetrators, they are the people who created it, I'm afraid they will have to deal with it.
Okay.
Vishal.
Okay, so we already have one unstable sort of a fluid situation in one of our neighboring countries. And as General Katoji is pointing out, if it continues the way it is going on, Pakistan may soon join the League of Afghanistan there as well. Now, Dr. Chaulia, staying on the international community and the way reactions have been coming in, the way now big powers are reacting to it, or their analysis are coming about. This is something which, and at the cost of repeating, I would say, India has been time and again pointing it out to the world community at every other forum. Now is the time for them to react. It's almost late, but still, they should react now.
Yeah, so what are the institutions or the mechanisms through which they can react?
Indeed.
One is, of course, the FATF process. They continue to be on the grey list. They say that they have met 26 parameters and there's just one more parameter. So they are hoping to get off the grey list. I think it's very important in light of what has happened in Afghanistan. They should not be taken off the grey list. And the international community should come to a consensus on this. That's one. The other concrete thing, of course, is sanctions. Of course, we are all talking. There's a big movement internationally in the public opinion. People are saying Pakistan should be subject to sanctions for being the sponsor of terrorism and destabilizing the whole region. That is where I think, China, of course, will have Pakistan's back and will save it because it's a permanent member of the Security Council. But short of that, we should be looking at, smaller, often if there is no UN level consensus, it doesn't matter. There can be a US-led, sanctions of us, plurilateral sanctions, smaller group level sanctions. So those are the things we should be advocating for. And I think punitive counter response, we have the right to it. If they carry out another, as Imran Khan has been threatening for a long time, there are going to be more Pulwamas. If there are going to be more Pulwamas, there are going to be more Balakots or much more. So I think we are very clear with our deterrence posture. We have already shown them last time when there was a crisis in 2019 that if they resort to adventurism, if they try to push more infiltrators or carry out IED blasts and suicide attacks and such things within India, which they are trying. They're actively plotting. Recently, there was one in Uttar Pradesh that was busted. So if any such thing goes to its culminates and leads to losses, they know that India will also react very hard this time. We are no longer a soft state. Under Narendra Modi government, we have given up the tag of being a soft state. So I think if you add up all these factors, barring China, there's not really much fallback for them. And even China is opportunistic because China, for example, does not bail them out when they have macroeconomic crisis. Who do they go to? IMF. It's not China that helps them when they are in the soup. So ultimately, I think there are means by which we can, conquer both military and economic, by which we can apply pressure. But I would still think that the realization has to come from within these countries. Pakistan is it's not small. It's a medium-sized country. The more than 200 million people, they have to realize that by giving too much power into the hands of this, unconstitutional authority, the military intelligence establishment, they have actually hacked at their own feet. That realization, that movement has to come from within. We have seen some moments in Pakistani history when people have risen up against the military. If this is not the time, when is the time? I mean, Imran Khan is a weak leader. He's a puppet of the military. Everybody knows it. Military is again leading them towards that suicidal path. Sooner or later, the people of Pakistan, civil society, they need to raise their voices. Otherwise, it's very hard to really reform a sovereign state just through outside pressure.
Indeed, that is one very important aspect of it. But Mr. Jal, would you agree with what Dr. Chaulia is pointing out in terms of what can be done vis-a-vis the international forums, FATF being one, IMF the other? Sanctions obviously is one complicated issue out there. China is expected to come to the rescue. So how do we move ahead?
From my viewpoint, certain things certainly need to be done. As Professor Chaulia mentioned, it is important that Pakistan should be retained in the grey list. Now, let me mention that by being in the grey list, Pakistan does not get sanctioned, but it does face a lot of financial pressures. In particular, its access to international loans gets restricted very severely. And as he mentioned, Pakistan had to run to the IMF, and Pakistan is going to find things more and more difficult. So it's very important to retain it in the grey list, although Pakistan's friends, particularly China, Turkey, and Malaysia, are trying to help it to exit the grey list at the next meeting in October. Secondly, I think it is very important that the United Nations should pressurize Pakistan to take action against the UN designated terrorists who are living there.
Okay.
And these include Hafiz Saeed, Zakiur Rahman, and Masood Azhar.
Okay.
If Pakistan has been taking only cosmetic action, then it can easily be unmasked. And Pakistan should be compelled to take serious action. That will put some sort of curbs by discouraging terrorist organizations. At the moment, Pakistan is getting away with whatever it wants, and unfortunately, that is not good for the global community. Okay.
Let's also bring in General Katoch here for the concluding comment. General Katoch, from your point of view, as both Dr. Chaulia and Mr. Dal are pointing out, that Pakistan's hand will have to be forced for a concrete action against these terror activities, and just doing cosmetic touches here and there won't be effective.
You see, I agree with both my fellow panelists, because that is exactly what Pakistan will have to do. But in my view, I don't think they have the capacity to do it. Yes, they will act against the Balochis, the groups which are fighting for freedom in Balochistan, and they will act against BP. But their capacity to act against the other groups, I don't think it is there, because the blowback on the Punjabi society is going to be very severe.
Okay.
So I think now they are in a catch-22 situation. If they really want to stop all the terrorists, then those terrorists are going to hit them very hard. They are not going to let them live in peace. So what do they do now? I think they will have to, tread the dangerous path. I don't see them changing their course as of now. So the onus will be on the world to force a change. From India's side, besides what has already been done, what the international community can do, I just have one suggestion, and that is that we have a ceasefire on the line of control. If terrorists move across the line of control, in my view, it should be made very clear to Pakistan that that is a violation of the ceasefire and we have the right to respond. We will treat it as an act of war and we have the right to respond. That message, I think, needs to go very clearly to Pakistan. Vishal.
Okay, indeed, there it is. Thank you so much, both General Katoch as well as Mr. Dayal and Dr. Chaulia for sharing your views and insights. As our experts were pointing out, and the analysis is pretty much clear, there is no doubt about what Pakistan has been doing, as in using terrorism as a tool of state policy, something which has been called out time and again by India, and now that the international community is also realizing this, there is an urgent need to go ahead and force Pakistan's hand to take concrete steps to ensure that its soil, its land is not used for any form of terror activity against any nation. And that is something which not only India, but all other major international powers at international forums will have to also take into account. We'll come back again tomorrow with a different topic. Till then, keep watching Sunset Television. Thank you.